So in our yesterday's session, we managed to look at a few things. And one was the application, the other one was the instance. So we said a few things about the application, about the instance, and also we needed to look at the user. So is there any question from yesterday's session? Anything that one would want to have some clarity from yesterday's session? So we managed to finish with this two. This one you can say it's done. Today we will look at the user. So I want to bring the importance of the user when it comes to this area of consultancy, or in this area of working with applications. And for instance, I want to give an example with a hotel ABC, and XYZ. Go to a hotel. How do you manage to get food on your table? Obviously, a hotel restaurants, they usually sell food and beverages. So if you happen to go in a hotel, how do you manage to get food and you start eating a cup of coffee and you start drinking? Is there anyone who can give us a kind of process? Just give a kind of an idea of how you will get that cup of tea and start drinking. Anyone with an idea? Let's have an interactive session, please.
You call the waiter and order the tea.
Sorry?
You call the waiter and order the tea.
So there is something, there is waiter, there is ordering, there is the tea. So this is very good information. But normally what happens, before you get to call the waiter and ordering, the waiter will come with probably something we call the menu. Okay? And on the menu, as you go through the menu, you'll see a variety of things that are being sold in that restaurants or in that hotel. So through or inside the menu, you'll find there are also sub menus. Okay. Then under sub menu, that's where you'll find the items. Okay, and that item in this case is tea. Okay. So for you to do the ordering, normally the best practice, the waiter will come and welcome you and bring you, if it's for instance, if you go to Java and you are a number of a group, each and every person will be brought a menu booklet so that you can go through and check the kind of food or item you wanted to, you will go ahead and order. So the reason I'm talking about this is because I want to bring the picture of how you get to interact, a user get to interact with the application and some of the key, functions that the user will be interacting with so that they can be able to execute a certain function in the system or in the application. So in our case, we will use the application as our hotel, because under the application it has so many features. It has so many features, and those features, they are the ones that will be like our items. We want to use those features to achieve a certain goal. For instance, the feature of booking an invoice, feature of receipting some payment that has been done by a customer. So a receipt is a feature, and you'll find before you get to that feature, you won't find it just anyhow, like it is on the surface, and you can now execute. Sorry? Someone has something? Please, I may request, if you're not asking a question, kindly mute on your end so that we have a clear recording, that we will not be having unnecessary background noise. So what I'm saying is that you won't find these features or the functions of the system somewhere just waiting for you freely, or anyone who can just be passing by and can be able to execute or access them. So what happens is, in the system, we also have menu, okay, and also we have submenu, okay, and in the level of items, we have features. We call them features stroke functions. Okay. That ordering term is important. We will use it somewhere. Let's keep it somewhere there. So, for instance, say this is our hotel, and equivalent to it is our application. So, the same case we have the menu in the hotel, the same case we have menu in the application. And in the application, the same case we have, in the hotel, the same case we have submenu under the menu. We also have the submenu in the application under the menu. And the same case we have items in a hotel under submenu. Same case you will find we have features in submenu under menu in the application. But now these features, for you to get this T, you have to do the ordering. You have to order. After now you have gone through the menu, submenu, and items. Now you have to settle, like you want a cup of tea, or you want some coffee, some burger, you have to order. So the same case applies when it comes to the application, or kind of equivalent of the same behavior, because in the application, for you to be able to access the features or the functions, there is something you have to do, or there is some other access that you have to do, or to access or to achieve. So under the hotel, we usually work with ordering. It is ordering the tea. Okay. We order the items, which is the tea, but under the responsibility, the application, we use the responsibility. Responsibility. And sometimes we call them modules. Okay. But basically, let me use the responsibility to avoid confusion. So we use the responsibility to be able to access or to execute the feature. So it's like ordering. We are ordering the certain functionality through the responsibility. So without the responsibility, without asking for ordering a tea, you can wait for the whole of the time, and the waiter will keep on asking you, have you ordered? Have you ordered? You know, the same case, without having access to the responsibility, you will not be able to access the functions. And we have said the functions are equivalent of items in the hotel, and items is like a tea or anything else you would be consuming. So what am I trying to say here is that you need the responsibility to be able to access or to reach out to the features so that you can be able to execute a certain functionality. And these responsibilities are also not hanging somewhere for the purpose of anyone can come and access. So you'll find once you log in the system, you might find there are some responsibilities that are missing, and maybe they are present in someone else's account. So what happens is, for a user who will log in to the application, they will need to have a responsibility assigned to them. Okay? They will need a responsibility assigned to this user, so that once the user has logged in, they will log in and find a responsibility, and from that they can now reach out to different functions under a certain submenu, under a certain menu, under a certain application. Remember, I talked about an application as a group of relevant forms and pages. So those forms and pages, they are the ones that you'll be opening through the features and functions. And a good example, okay, a good example is invoice form or invoice, call them invoice form, or something like supplier page. Okay, so the moment you log into a system, you will find an application, or you are logging in into an application, and this application, through the system administrator, the system administrator will create you as a user. Okay, once you log in, you will get access to responsibilities that has been assigned to you as a user, or to whoever has logged in as a user. And therefore, from there, they can be able to reach to different menus, different submenus, different features or functions, and be able now to execute different business activities. Again, a user will not be just logging and they end up, finding themselves they're inside the application. No. What do you think a user might need? Let's have an interactive session, please. What do you think a user might need to log in the system? Someone, please.
Password and the username.
Good. So, for a user to be able to access the responsibility or the application or to log in the application so that they can be able to execute any form of function or feature, they have to have the username, and password. Okay, there must be a username and a password. So these are things that you'll be working with when you start interacting with the system. So it is very, very much important to understand why are you having this information in this stage, or why, or what information do I need, or what details. We call them credentials. For instance, if we tell you to do something, or you tell your colleague to execute a certain task in a certain instance. I talked about instance, and I said we have different instances. So, for instance, you met your colleague and they want you to do something under a certain instance, and it's the first time that you are being interacting with that instance. So what you'll do as a consultant, having understood what is an instance or what credentials you need to execute that task, you'll find yourself asking the colleague who is sharing the information with you, like, oh, can you please share the login credentials? Simply because you understand you don't have the username, the password, and also something important that you will be also interacting with is the URL. Okay, URL, this is the link. Each and every instance will have its unique URL, each and every instance. So the moment that the DBA creates the database, the DBA will still share the URL with you, and also share the password, the username and the password, so that you can be able to use the URL and the username and the password to access or to log in as a user. Okay, so this information, I hope you are getting how it is flowing and how it's relating to each other, for the purpose of understanding where we'll be coming from. Because once we start finishing, or once we finish up with the introduction and all the theory part, you will be able to see all this information. Where do what kind of URL we will use to log in for the first time, the username and password, the user, the responsibilities, you'll be able to see all this information, the menu, submenu, and features. I'll take you through all this before we start recording transaction or even doing any setup. So it is very, very much important to understand before for you to be able to execute any functionality, you have to have this information, which is very key. So the first, normally what happens is that when the DBA has set up the database and they have shared the URL, the very first password that they usually share. Username is usually the sysadmin, okay, and also the password is sysadmin. So you will find these two are the same, just for the purpose of maintaining uniformity. They will be shared as same. But now, as you continue practicing and working with the instance, sometimes it gets blocked because you might find you are working in it and you are not only alone, you are several consultants. And these consultants might sometimes forget to, to key in the correct password. So what usually happens, the system usually blocks the password. And now the sysadmin has to generate, the DB has to generate another password and share with the functional team or the technical team so that they can be able to log in the main application. So is there any question regarding the user? Is there any question? That's about the user. And we will continue to see more of how we achieve some of these, functionality. For instance, how do we get the user or the responsibility get assigned to the user? How do we create a user? For us to be able to execute all the transaction, we have to create the user first. Once we log in, we log in as a sysadmin, and a sysadmin, it means you have all the functionality of setting up like everything in that system. So you will be able to change password. Okay, you can change password, you can create a user, you can change a password for that user, and again you can assign responsibility to that user, and only responsibilities that are assigned to the user that a user once they log in can be able to see. So it is very, very much important so that you don't get confused why you are not seeing some of the responsibility. Probably you created a responsibility for purchasing, and this user is in finance. So you log in under this user and you want to execute an issue with purchasing. So the moment you log in under the user who is under finance and you are missing the purchasing responsibility, it means you should be able to tell why and how you can assign that responsibility to this user, if it is a must that you have to work with that responsibility under this user. So I hope that information is making some sense as we continue getting deeper in the training. Any question about the user? Don't focus so much on this. This was just for illustration purposes so that you can understand how the application and other features under the application will come up. But focus on you'll deal with the application. Under the application, we have the menu. Under the menu, we have submenus. And also, under submenu, we have features and functions, which will help us to execute the functionalities of the application. So under the invoice, you can be able to create under the invoice form, you can be able to create invoices, that is supplier invoices or purchase invoices. Under the supplier page, which is a function or a feature under the application. For instance, here the application will be accounts payable. You will see all this accounts payables. So under this, you will be able to execute or to create supplier under accounts payable application through a feature which is supplier page. I hope this is clear to everyone. Any question under user or any other, part, even if it's the instance, even if it's the application, you can ask. If there is no question, then I can say you are comfortable with the information regarding the user. And that one is also done. And we will focus more on something else today, which I want us to be looking at. And one thing, again, don't fear to respond when I ask a question, because I want us to have an interactive session. For instance, if I give you some details, and these details, I want you to tell me whether you can be able to record a transaction from the angle of an organization or a company or a business, okay? And a good example is maybe we purchased, like, let me talk about laptops, which are maybe 20 laptops. And I give you a figure of maybe 50. So if I tell you to record a transaction, okay? If I tell you to record a transaction with this information, what kind of transaction will you record? Or is this information enough to record a transaction? These two information. Someone, please. No one. Are we together?
It's not enough because the double entry concept won't be met.
Sorry?
It is not enough because the double entry concept won't be met.
Why will it not be met? Okay. So what happens is that there are three key information that when you are working or when you are booking a transaction, they must be there. And one of the information is the date. Okay. Date is very much important when it comes to the purchasing or recording a transaction. When did it occur? The occurrence is very, very key. Again, the information of what was transacted or the kind of transaction that was done, you can't just probably give that information with few words, or maybe two words or 3 words. So you need something we call a description. Okay. Once you have the description, something else you need is probably, for instance, if I ask you what is this 50,000, what would you say? What does 50,000 represent?
Total cost of 20 laptops.
Yeah, but you see, you can't tell whether it's a cost or it's quantity. You understand? Because probably we can say yes, it's a cost. But what differentiates this figure from, like, for instance, maybe the balance that you left after you bought 20 laptops? What differentiates it with maybe the balance you ended up with after you topped up your inventory? So this 50,000, for it to make sense or to give a meaningful information, you'll find it has to be attached with some more information. And when it comes to purchasing or the cost, you'll find it will relate to the currency. Okay? It will have a relation to currency. So when we are booking a transaction, you have to indicate, like, yes, I paid or we purchased a certain item or these 20 laptops for 50,000 in a certain currency. It could be Kenya shilling, it could be USD, okay, or any other currency. So currency is very, very much important to differentiate what kind of value that these items you're purchasing or you purchased have. Otherwise, it will be hanging, or it will be having some sort of inadequate information if you happen to tell someone to just go and record that transaction. So today we will discuss about these 3 important terms. And the first one is the date. For the transaction to be recorded, remember, you don't just record a transaction. I talked about recording an invoice, storing that invoice information in the database. Then later, you will query that information from the database in form of a report. So normally, we have to, for the information or for data to give some insight, you'll find it has to be giving some kind of range of period. And that period, we cannot achieve it without the date. So for you to be able to report, date is very key, so that you can be able to tell that this occurrence or this kind of transaction or this kind of data has been generated in a certain period of time. So what happens is that we must have a date when we are booking a transaction. In our systems, what happens is, for you to have a date, you must have a calendar. Okay? You must have a calendar, and this calendar, we usually define it in the system. And we don't just go directly and define the calendar. There is some few information we have to be clear with. So we have two types of years, which will help us to know the type of calendar we will define. For instance, for the financial year in Kenya, when does it start and when does it end?
July to July next year, or July to June next year.
So we can say, for instance, the current financial year will start or started on 1st of July 2020, 2024, up to 30th June 2025. Are we correct? That is Kenya. Okay. What about in USA? What is the financial year? When does it start and when does it end?
USA starts January same year and then finishes December same year.
Oh,
okay.
So that is 1st of January 2024 to 31st Dec 2024. So what happens is we have two types of year. We have, let me drop this here down. So what happens is this kind of year, which is starting in between one year and ends in the next year, we call it fiscal year. Okay. And when we have the year that starts on the 1st of January and ends at the December, at the end of the year, this one we call it calendar year. So when you are implementing, you have to be very keen with the kind of year that that country that you're implementing for starts and ends. Because with this, it will help you when you're defining the calendar. This one we call it accounting calendar. When you're defining the accounting calendar, it's very much important for you to know, will you define for physical year or for calendar year? This one, you'll find them in the system. You can be able to select either of the two when defining the accounting calendar. Okay. Again, before we define the accounting calendar, we usually work or define something we call period types. What are period types? Okay. Under period types, you'll find these are kind of it's like an characteristic you add to the calendar so that it can have some certain behaviors. Why am I equating period types to a certain characteristic? It's like you are tuning the calendar, or you'll be tuning the calendar so that it can behave in a certain way. Why am I saying that? Period types, you'll find you can be able to define periods either in daily, can be having daily periods, you can be having monthly periods, and maybe quarterly, maybe semi-annually, but mostly you'll find for the purpose of reporting, these two are the majorly used. Okay, these two are the majorly used, and for daily you might find it applies to banking, because these are the one who closes their books daily. And when it comes to other organizations, you'll find they have to close their books of account on a monthly basis. So what happens for us to achieve or to be able to define an accounting calendar? We will have to define period types. And a good example is that you can have like a period of maybe 12 months, because when the period is starting from 1st of July 2024 to 30th June 2025, those are 12 months. But on the same, you can extend that year with an extra period for the purpose of adjustment. You can have an adjusting period and you end up having a 13 period year. And mostly you'll see this is what happens. 13 periods year. So for us to be able to define a calendar, we first of all have to define period types. And this period type, we usually provide, for instance, the name, like for instance, Jan 2024. Then we provide starting the range, start and end. And now for the first period, which is Jan 2024, you'll find it has it starts on 1st of January 2024 to 30th or 31st January 2024. You go to Feb. Okay. Feb start on 1st of Feb 2024 up to 29 or 28, depending on the year that whether it's leap year or not, up to Feb 2024. So this is how we will define all this period until the last one. It could be the 13th or it could be the 12th. But mostly we work with 13th period so that we can be able to adjust. So we will have all this defined, before we go ahead and create our calendar or our accounting calendar. Is there any question? When we will be booking a transaction, you'll find for the purpose of control, this is why we have these periods. For the purpose of control, you might find the January period is not opened. These periods are closed and they are opened. And you might find probably, let's say here we have from the previous financial year, we have 31st, we have DEC 2023, starting from 1st of DEC 2023 to 31st DEC 2023. This period you might find is open. The status is open. So what happens is that you can be able to go ahead and record a transaction in this open period. Okay. You can go ahead and book a transaction here, okay, because the period is open. The period is open. But the period that is not opened, here you cannot book a transaction. Okay? You cannot book a transaction here. So the reason I'm telling you this is because you'll find there are sometimes you'll go trying to test. Maybe you're testing to book a receipt or purchase order, or maybe a receipt or an invoice. And the moment you try to select the date, the system will throw you a warning or a caution that you're trying to book a transaction in a period that it is not open. The accounting periods in payables is not open, or the accounting periods in GL, that is general ledger, it's not open. So as a functional consultant, without having understood how we create the calendar, and how we end up to open and close these periods, you will not be able to know how to fix that caution or that information that the system will throw to you. But having done the understanding on the importance of a calendar, how the calendar is created, under the calendar we can only have a calendar if we have periods. Otherwise, we will not be having this information. So you'll find you need to go and open this period so that you can go ahead and book that transaction. Is there any question under the date? We were discussing about the date, the importance of a date. So the moment you go to book a transaction, you will select that date so that you can be able to book the transaction based on that, on when it occurred. But if that period is not opened, you will not be able to provide this date. So that's why this is very, very much important. Again, there is the importance of understanding why do we close and why do we open. We close this because we want to control the transactions that are happening in a certain period of time. If, for instance, the policy of an organization is to report monthly, you should not book, or you should not allow users to book transaction in an already past period. Let them book on the current period, and that one will even instill discipline and proficiency and efficiency when it comes to booking transaction in the right time. There are some organizations, though there are some small organizations here outside, you'll find a full accountant is piling up a lot of data without feeding them in the system. Simply because you might find there is no even a system. Okay, there is a system, but they don't have the best utilization or the best usage of the knowledge of usage of the system. So you'll find the system can be able to control all these and to close and open the period, but no one is bothered to instill or to push for that policy so that each and every transaction can be booked at the right time. So it is very, very much important to have the periods so that they can be closed and they can be as well be opened. Again, you'll find the data that was booked in the previous period. It will remain to be for that period, even when it comes to audit time. So if you happen to have a standard way of booking, closing and opening the period, you will have a consistency even in your audit query in case it arises. But yeah, that's the reason why you need to understand the importance of calendar and how the calendar relates to the date, and how the periods relate to the date as well. Any question? That's about the date. If there's no question, let's discuss the currency first. So normally, when it comes to currency, let me give a few illustrations for currency. For instance, you have 1,000 shillings. For people who are not from Kenya and you are not in USA, you can imagine your currency here. So I don't want to be biased. It's just for learning purpose. So again, we use something like 2,000 USD. Okay. And something like 4,000 units. Okay. So in Kenya, what type of currency is KES? So what do we call this currency in Kenya? Assuming like we are purchasing something, and that purchase or maybe payment has been done in Kenya, it has been done in Kenya shillings. What name would you give that type of currency? Someone, please. Oh, you can guess. Just guess.
Local currency.
Good. This is local currency. Okay. So assume you are in USA and you have done a purchasement, or you have done a purchase type of currency is USD in USA. Anyone?
Current. Current.
Why?
Sir?
Why is it fallen?
Yeah, because it is a currency that is not being used locally from the purchasing country.
The purchasing currency, it is in USA. I've said it is in USA. What type of currency? The purchase is happening in USA.
Oh,
The purchase
it
is
will
happening
still
in
be
USA.
local.
Exactly. So even this one is local currency. Okay. So when it comes to the implementation of a certain country, and you are using the currency of that country, we refer to it as local currency. And again, in the system, we usually call it functional currency. Okay. Again, we usually refer to it as functional currency. So these transactions are happening in their own country, and they're happening in their local currencies. So we refer to them as functional currency. But we have scenarios whereby you will find a transaction has happened in Kenya through USD currency. And another transaction has happened in USA through yes currency. So what type of currency is this in Kenya and in USA?
They are both foreign.
Good. They are both foreign currencies. They're both foreign currency. So when we are working or when we are booking transaction in the system, if you are not booking a transaction in the local currency, or there are some certain scenarios whereby you might find an organization, it is in a certain this is international organization, so they are not using the local currency, but even the currency that they are using, it's not the currency of of that country. So for instance, you might find there's an organization which will transact always with USD. So we can refer to USD as their functional currency. And now any other currencies apart from USD that is being used. For instance, there is an organization, one of our clients here in Kenya, they transact with USD. And they treat Kenya shilling as they will treat Kenya shilling as a what? Which type of currency?
Foreign.
Good. They treat it as a foreign currency. currency, and yet you see it's locally, and they're in the country that currency is local currency to that country. So what do I mean? The functional currency is the currency that an organization might choose to do their transaction, their main transaction in. But there are some scenarios you might find. Primarily, the local currency is the one that will be treated as functional currency, because what happens is that you will not find there are foreign or international organization in each and every country, or even there's a number of them. You will find, for instance, in Kenya, a number of probably local organizations that are using the systems. You'll find they are using the local currency. But when international organization comes, they may choose to use other currencies for their own reasons as their functional currencies. So it's good to understand which country will you be implementing for before you choose or before you understand the currencies they are working with. Also, it is important to understand the organization, what currency they usually operate with, so that you can be able to implement that one as their functional currency. Any other currency that is not functional is treated as foreign currency. And you will see as we continue to learn more, whereby there is the uploading or maintenance of exchange rates due to the currencies that are used through transactions that are not functional currencies. So you might find there are some scenarios whereby you must have a exchange rate so that it can have an equivalent of what is not functional currency, and it is foreign currency, and it has to be reported with functional currency. So that one we will see when we'll be learning about the general ledger in finance. So, any questions so far? We have talked, or we have tackled these two. So we can say this is functional currency when it comes to Kenya. And when it comes to USD, it's also functional currency. So what about this one? What are these? The third one usually have a third type of currency. So okay, let's assume this transaction happened in Kenya. Okay. If this transaction happened in Kenya, this will be foreign currency. Okay, this will be foreign currency. And if the other way around is this transaction happens in USA, this will be a foreign currency in USA, and this one will be functional or local currency. So the third one, their statistical representation that we usually work with for the purpose of reporting. They don't give monetary value, but they give, numbering kind of representation. So when it comes to units, like 4,000 units or 4,000 meters or 4,000 marks, This one we call it static or stat currency. A stat currency is a currency that doesn't have monetary value, but it has statistical representation of units or maybe numbers for the purpose of reporting. So this one is for there are sometimes you might find when we are doing some calculation, we are doing calculation with this kind of data that is in statistical representation. We don't provide it in terms of value, but the moment we record it in a field whereby it is representing currency, we represent or we record it as static currency. But I don't want us to dwell so much on this because this is just for the purpose of information that we have three types of currencies. I hope this one is clear. Okay. Any question about currencies? Any question, please? Even if it's not related to currency. So we will be working with local currency and foreign currency. Is it clear? On our third item, it might be a bit long. I don't know whether we'll be able to complete it on time. Can't complete it with less than 15 minutes. So we talk about description. Okay. Description, as it sound, it's describing what or it's describing something. And when it comes to the system approach or the system point of angle, the description when it comes to a transaction, you are explaining or you're giving more details on a transaction that has happened so that someone who will come even 100 years later will have some insight or some understanding that this transaction was happening maybe probably with this kind of information. For instance, what happens is you find we have, from the organization point of view, we have different, department, branches, apologies for that, I dropped off. So what I was explaining is that in organization or company point of view, we have different branches or even companies. Like for instance, you might find, if I can give an example with KCB Group, you find under KCB Group, it has different businesses under it. But the reporting has to be done in the level of the KCB Group. When they are giving financial reports, they won't tell you that we are reporting as maybe Nairobi branch or Moi Avenue branch or maybe Mombasa branches, They report as a group of companies. So what happens is that there are transactions which usually happens under each and every level of that group. And for this transaction to be tracked or to be able to be, apologies, my network is misbehaving. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't see the screen.
Let me share. What about now? Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, it's okay now. Thank you.
So what I was saying is that you will find we have different organizations with different companies under same group of companies. And I was giving an example of KCB on how they can be having different, apart from banking businesses, you'll find they have other businesses like even insurance. You might find they have other business like what? What else do we have in banks? Like internet banking and all that. So this kind of information has to be maintained in a way that it can be easier to report and be easier to drill down to the source of the transaction. So for instance, you can have a company which has maybe a business of marketing, okay? It has a business of marketing. It has a business of maybe software, okay? Software development. It has a business of maybe selling laptops or again, apologies for that. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, from my end, it is okay.
So what we are saying is that these are companies, but these companies are under a certain group of companies. Like for instance, let's work with KCB group. Okay. KCB group has different companies. Let's assume KCB group is not a bank. It has several companies that are doing marketing business, software business. They are doing insurance. Doing any other business like maybe car selling. They are doing things like any other business. Give me an idea. They are doing consultancy. Okay. This company, they have transactions, but this transaction has to be reported in the level of the KCB group. So under these companies, we have departments. I'll call them cost centers. Okay. These cost centers, one of it, I might say, is sales department. We have inventory department. We have finance department. called policy or scheme. Policy department. We might have a department like which one? Legal. Okay. We might have a department like of maybe probably procurement. Yeah. You might have another one, final one. Any other department? Manufacturing, or let's call it production. Okay. So these are departments which interact with each and every company here based on the nature of business or nature of transactions that are involved. Under this department, you will find we have accounts. Okay. We have accounts which now can be able to hold the primary transaction. You can be able to record a transaction under a certain account. For instance, an account that we can have, we have cash. Okay. We can have cash account, right? We can have like let's say rent payment or rent charges. Okay. Then we have any other income, rent income. You can have rent income. It's also an account. We have accounts like employee training. Okay. You can have employee travel cost. Okay. We can have information or account like office team. Can have an account of furnitures. Not like the furniture there, it might confuse you when we are doing fixed assets. Give me an account. Any account we can add here. But anyway, basically, for accounts, you can have as many as you can imagine, because this one is for the purpose of recording a unique transaction that is occurring. Probably it's keep on recurring each and every maybe cycle of the year. So what happens is that this information, we will not be able to track the transaction from each and every segment of item. For instance, the company, the sales, and cash in the naming form. What happens is we usually have the coding purpose. What happens is when we are doing the transaction booking. For instance, is the transaction that happens under the company of maybe selling car. Maybe they have done what do we call it? Car washing. Car wash. They have washed the cars because the client, when coming to visit the yard, they want to see the cars are clean. So they might have an account for car wash expenses. Maybe they pay someone and someone comes and wash their cars before the client come and view. And what happens is that they will have to record that expense under the account of car wash expenses. Under car wash expenses, probably this will be under maybe the finance department. Okay, and the company that has involved in car wash expenses is the car selling company. Maybe it has a different name better than this one, for lack of a better word. So what happens is that when we are doing the representation of reporting the occurrences or the transaction that has happened, we normally don't represent or book the transaction with this kind of names. Yes, the name will be there, but what we usually do, we provide, or the system has the capability of providing some code. Okay, for instance, you can say 001, that is the first code, then 002, then 003, this one will be 004, this one will be 005. The same case applies to all other segment. This one we can give it a different code combination. We call it code combination, or let me call it the code for now. Then I will bring the terminology of code combination later. So this one can be 10 or even 20,001. Okay, this one can be, and it doesn't have to be the same like length, but this one you'll come to understand later why. Then 2002, 2003. Okay, let me see whether I can drag it. Yeah, like that. The same case when it comes to accounts, we'll have its code also. Like 301201. Okay, then we drag it all the way down. So when we are doing the transaction recording, for us to be able to drill down or to track this expense, we will have this kind of combination. Like we combine this code of account, we combine with the code of department or cost center, we combine with the code of the company. And you can find here in between, or even here at the end, there is something like a project. Okay, there's something like a project, and you'll find this project needs to be maintained with they need to track, or a certain organization want to track expenses or transactions in the level of project as well. Okay, so you might find you have project 1. Okay, for lack of a better word, project 2, project 3, and so on and so on. So this one also will have its code. Okay, its code, you'll find it is maybe 401. Then we drop like that. So when we are doing the transactions, we will be doing something that we call code combination. And this one, it will help us to be able to tell, like, this transaction was done, like for instance, if it's the employee training was done for a certain project. Let me give it some blue color, maybe project 2. And for the project 2, we have, it was under the Department of maybe Finance, and this was being done for marketing. Marketing company is the one that incurred these costs. So when we are recording our transaction, we will start with 001. Okay. Then we can put, in the system we have the capability of choosing the separator, the kind of separator that we will use when it comes to the code combination. So we'll have 001 or 0001. Then we bring the next code, which is 203. Then we bring the account code, which is 301-204. Then we map it with the project 2, which is 402. So in our recording, when we are selecting the code, or when we are doing the description, or we are recording the description of that transaction, we will bring this code combination, or we will select this code combination. And once now we select this code combination, we can now book our transaction, and it can be able to be tracked down or drilled down to the level of what exactly triggered this transaction. It could be the company, it could be maybe from the side of the project. So this is very, very much important, and this is what we call, or we refer to as the description. There's so much we'll discuss about this. This is just on a very high level, but it's very much important to have this idea, because it will take us to the next level of discussing the calendar more, where we will use the calendar, where we will use the currency, and where we will use something we call chart of account. Okay. So from tomorrow, we will discuss about calendar, not how to create it, but now how to use it now more, apart from now on the selection of the date when you are booking a transaction. This is accounting calendar. It's not just any calendar. Okay. And also something we talked about, which is currency. So these are very, very important items when it comes to the implementation of the system. And without them, we cannot go anywhere. We cannot do anything. So it's very, very much important for you to have a basic understanding on what happens, so that we can be able to book a transaction. All these we are doing so that we can prepare ourselves for the booking of a transaction in the system. So even before you understand how we do the setup where you can go and I show you direct within few minutes. But without understanding why we are doing the setup, it's nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. So it is important for us to go these steps so that you can be able to understand. So I hope this is clear how we can do account combination and its purpose, and why we call it a description is because it entails, or it gives more information about how the transaction was triggered and where it originated from. So that's why we call it a description, and we can be able to drill down through code combination, and we track that transaction in that level. Any question?
question from me.
Yes.
Saying no question from my side.
All right. I believe even the rest are quiet because they don't have a question. But from tomorrow, I'll be asking now my question to individuals so that we can also even hear their voices. But so far, so good. If there's no question, we can call it a day. And if you feel like you need some more clarity, feel free to ping me. And I'm ready to respond. So that's all for today. Have a good night and bye-bye.